So the Corporations Act in Section 911A requires people to have a licence to give personal financial advice. Now, personal financial advice would be the provision of stock tips, for instance. Now, in your cases of dealing with Calkine, were you given individual shares to invest in?
Yes, recommendations.
I would agree with that. I provide ASIC specifically with my written notes where I was given the buy and sell prices, and if you didn't have sufficient funds, as Mr. Weatherstone said, to pay for more subscriptions, they even offered to look at your portfolio and what to sell and reinvest with them. So they certainly don't comply with their license.
Okay, well, ASIC has written to the committee this week saying that they have not yet reached a conclusion in relation to the allegations that Calkine is providing unlicensed financial advice. That's what ASIC says. Have you provided information to ASIC about these individualised stock recommendations?
Yes.
In my situation, I believe others, I didn't have any phone calls. We asked for that information. I had handwritten notes of each and every call. I provided ASIC a Dropbox full of every bit of information that I had provided to them. I think that was on the 17th of July, and that included pretty well on every call following a service. There were individual, as Chris said, buy and sell recommendations based on, we were told, others who were getting into the market, and this was a good opportunity.
Okay, so the law requires an organisation to have a licence to provide personal financial advice, which would include the provision of individualised stock recommendations that you say you both received from Calkine. You also say that you've provided this information to ASIC in written form, as much as you could provide. And what has the response been from ASIC upon receiving that information?
As I said, in my situation, the last email I had to a lady by the name of Alex, I think, at ASIC, was on the 17th of July. There's a few emails in prior days just trying to get access to the Dropbox. And I've not had an email or a phone call or any contact since ASIC since the 17th of July, when I believe they gained access to all of the information that I'd provided in a Dropbox.
And in your case, Mr. Pitts?
It's exactly the same. That I didn't have as many detailed notes, but the notes I did have over the period of time and different account managers, showed the buy and sell prices and their recommendations that they gave me.
And when did you first provide this information to ASIC?
Well, for me, it was after. I think I reached out to ASIC early on, and I got some automated response saying all individual had to go through AFCA. So that's when I submitted the claim to AFCA on the 2nd of March, which I said is 7 months, and they still haven't made any. There's no start of a mediation or anything. I'm still in limbo. The person left, and then subsequent to that, in talking to Chris and some others, I then had an hour phone call with ASIC, and then following that, they asked me to provide all of the documentation, which I did. Which, as I said, and since then I've had no communication from them.
Yeah, and my situation is very similar. I originally tried to lodge my complaint with ASIC. It's very difficult to lodge a complaint with ASIC after going through all their filters. When you do get through it, they tell you, thank you, and you won't be hearing from me. So I was quite surprised that it probably, I think, as a result of the activities of this committee and the publicity Calkine has had in the press, ASIC finally reached out to me and asked me to provide them with information to support my claims, which I did. And I've heard nothing back from them, although they did offer to write up a statement for me for approval.
Okay, so you've been interviewed by ASIC, Mr. Pitts, and Mr. Weatherstone, have you been interviewed by ASIC?
I've had a phone call. I believe following that phone call, they were looking to set up a meeting with me to bring in some other people, but that's never occurred.
Okay, and your last communication was in July?
17th of July was the last email I sent to ASIC, and no response since then. And my last, yeah.
It's interesting because in New Zealand, the Financial Markets Authority issued a directive in August last year, on the 10th of August 2022, which said that Calkine New Zealand must immediately cease making or causing to make sales calls to persons in New Zealand. So they have been stopped in their tracks in New Zealand, but on the basis of the evidence that you provided, and ASIC itself has said they've received 26 separate reports of misconduct between July 2017 and July 2023. July 17 and July 2023, they can't make a decision about whether or not they're providing unlicensed financial advice. So it seems, is there any other insight you can give to us?
My only other reference is, you talk about financial personal or advice, but when I worked with other previously, there's a whole lot of documentation that needed to be filled out around, my situation, my risk tolerance, how much money have I got. I don't have anything. There wasn't anything filled out at all. It was done over the phone, and it was, signing up to. So they have no understanding of my personal situation at all. I'm sure that's, again, I'm not the, the legislator, but I thought now with everything that happened that there was quite a heavy burden on getting, an understanding of all that information up front before any personal financial advice was being provided. And they have, other than my name, they know very little or nothing about me, and I'm sure other clients.
Well, there is. There are very detailed laws in this space, which have just been subject of a major review by Miss Michelle Levy, who's recommended various changes. But the reality is that there are a lot of corporate crimes that happen in this country, and some of which are in this financial advice space, where people do try and run unlicensed schemes. And this looks like it very well could be one based on the volume of evidence we've received. So I'll hand now the call to the Deputy Chair, but I do want to thank you for coming forward to try and give the committee contemporaneous information, because a lot of our cases are historical. There are a lot of people that have been let down, but it's also important that we are able to capture information that's happening in real time, because I think it demonstrates, particularly when you look at the New Zealand example, that you can move quickly if you are properly calibrated.